Hello and welcome back to Theory Lessons with Ben. So, in the last 3 lessons we talked about rhythm. Today we are going to be making a move towards talking about harmony. And we're going to start that conversation by talking about basic things like the staff, the clefs, the notes, and also specifically how to find those notes on the piano, which can be useful if you want to play your part. So, firstly, the staff. This is called a staff. A staff is 5 lines, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what we write our musical notation on. So what we do with the staff is we put different clefs on it. So you've probably seen this. This is called a G clef. Probably are used to calling it the treble clef, but I'll explain that in a second. This one is called the F clef. And then there's another one. We'll see if I can draw it. I was practicing, but it doesn't look great. C clef. Google that one so you can see what it really looks like. These are different clefs. In choral music, we don't see much of this, but I'm just including it so we can sort of understand the theory behind what a clef does. A clef shows us where a specific note is. In this case, the G above middle C, the F below middle C, and this one shows us where middle C is. So in theory, if you wanted to, you could put these clefs anywhere, and I'll show you where a particular note is. So if I wanted to draw my G clef up here like this, the way it shows you where G is this little circly part. See, it circles around that note. So if I wanted to draw it there, that's where G would be, and all my other notes would be determined from there. The F clef, let's say I wanted to draw the F clef here, which is not where it normally goes. This would be F. It shows us where F is with these little dots, the line between the dots. And then the C clef is, I'm not going to draw it again, but it's this little space right here. This is showing you where middle C is. So you could move that around to different spots, and actually that's what we do. This is, where it is right now would be called the alto clef. If it was up here, that is what we call the tenor clef. Now I'm going to draw these where we normally see them. This is where we normally see the G clef, and when it's here we call it the treble clef. And this is where we normally see the F clef, and when it's here we call it the bass clef. And together these make the grand staff. Again, the C clef we're not going to worry about too much in choral music. There is another kind of clef that we do need to mention, which is a treble clef with the 8 underneath it. And this is for the tenor line. This is exactly like a treble clef, except that the part is sung an octave lower. So this is still G. It's just when you sing it, you're singing the G below middle C rather than the G above middle C. Okay, so that's the staff and clefs. Now the way notes work on the staff is the lines and the spaces are really just white notes on the piano, is how you can think of that. And often I'll reference things back to the piano because I'm a pianist and it's a nice physical way to think about and look at theory. So if we start just drawing notes here, this is just, I'm just going up by white notes. I'm going to do this here. We could do this forever. That'll suffice. Now you probably already know this, but just in case. This is our musical alphabet, A to G. There's no H, no I, there's no Z. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So as we go up, line, space, line, we're just going up through the musical alphabet and we keep restarting. This is middle C, by the way. Middle C is 1 ledger line above the bass clef or 1 ledger line below the treble clef. So that's always kind of easy to find. Of course, if you're singing the tenor part, middle C, if we're looking back up here, middle C would be right there because you're singing an octave below, so you would be singing this pitch in a normal treble clef. So that, but that's its own little thing. So if I was going to play this on the piano, and I have a handy dandy little keyboard here, it would just look like this. Actually, this is the G we're starting on. My little highlighter up here. I'll show you where we're on the piano. Can't show you the whole piano. And we can keep going up. That's those notes. So that's pretty simple. These are just the white notes going up. Now there are some tips and tricks to finding notes without having to count a million notes up from wherever the note is, and I'm going to show you a few. My favorite to teach is there are these little mnemonic devices. So the spaces in the treble clef spell face. This F is the F above middle C. So that's F, A, C, E. By the way, you'll notice on this keyboard they have C4, F4. Those are like the scientific pitch notation names. Middle C is C4. So if you get one of these apps, if you don't have a real piano and you want to practice, I think this is like one of the first apps that comes up when you Google piano apps. This is nice. So then you can find middle C for sure by finding C4. But back to what I was saying, F, A, C, E. You'll notice we just skip a white note each time because these is space, 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 space. So if you're reading music and you see a note here, instead of not having any idea what that is, you can go, oh, it's on a space, spell face, it's an E. And then you know that that's an E, and then you can go to your piano and say, you can go F, A, C, E. This is the E, here's middle C, it's this E way up here. You can always kind of reference everything back to middle C if you're not sure which octave you're in. Okay, so F, A, C, E for the treble clef, we got E, G, B, D, F. Every good boy deserves fudge. Or Elvis's Guitar Broke Down Friday. For the bass clef, A, C, E, G. All cows eat grass. Pretty uncontroversial. And G, B, D, F, A for the bass clef lines. Great big dogs fight animals. So we have 4 different mnemonic devices here. We have one for treble clef spaces, treble clef lines, bass clef spaces, bass clef lines. And that covers all the notes on the piano. So if you can memorize those 4 things and check your clef, of course, if you're singing music and you're a bass, you really only have to memorize the bass. And then if you have notes above or below on what we call ledger lines, you can just find the nearest note you know. So you know A because it's animals, but you have a note up here, and you just go A, B, C, D, E, and then you know it's an E. So you can count up from the closest note you know. So that's one method. Another method is called the landmark method, which I'm not that well versed in, but I think I've got this right. Even if I don't have it exactly the way it's taught, what I'm going to show you still makes sense. So these are all C's. This one, as I said before, is middle C. The reason these are kind of nice and easy to memorize is because they're a mirror of each other. You'll notice if we go down a C octave below middle C in the bass clef, it's 1, 2, 3 spaces down. This C is 1, 2, 3 spaces up. And then these C's on the top and the bottom are both 2 ledger lines away from the staff. So that way you know all your C's and you can count to notes from the C. And then you also have some other notes that you know because you know this is G because of the G clef. You know this is F because of the F clef. And over time, it's like learning a language. If you actually spend time and use apps to get used to it, test yourself, flashcards, whatever it is, whatever method, you can learn them, and you can even discard these kinds of tricks at some point once you just see a note and you know where it belongs. Just a note on the keyboard part. When you are looking for different pitches, it's good to recognize that each white note has a certain relationship to the black notes around it. The keyboard is just a repeating series of patterns. We have 2 black notes and 3 black notes, 2 black notes, 3 black notes. So it keeps starting over. So if you think of it as starting at C, every C is to the left of the 2 black notes. C, 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 C. Every E is to the right of the 2 black notes. E, E, E. That's another good thing to know. But if you don't memorize that, you can always go, especially for singing music, you're never going to be terribly far away from middle C. But if you can also memorize bass C for basses and this treble C for sopranos and altos, then you kind of have these little landmarks to where you can count C, B, H, E, or C, D, E, F, up or down from there, if you're trying to play your note on the piano. Okay, the last thing that makes note playing difficult is that this would be pretty easy, actually, if it was all white notes. I think it wouldn't be too hard. But we have all those black notes on the piano, and we get to those black notes using these symbols. This is a sharp, and this is a flat. And this means you go up 1 half step, and this means you go down 1 half step. Half step. A half step is just the very next note on the piano. So you'll notice half steps aren't always going to be black notes. If I write a C sharp, it's going to be right there. If I write G flat, it's going to be right there. If you see an E sharp in your music, it's going to be the same note as an F on the piano. So sometimes you can sharp or flat a note. C flat is actually a B. It just means you go to the very next note, whether it's white or black. And that's what sharps and flats are. And that's actually going to wrap up what I'm going to talk about today. But just as a precursor to what we're going to get to next week, the reason reading music really gets tricky is because composers use key signatures. Here's an example of a key signature. This is E major or C sharp minor. This is showing that we're working in a particular scale, which is something we'll talk more about next time. But this is saying that every time you come to an F or a C or a G or a D, that's the notes that those sharps are on, that note will be sharped. And that gets really tricky because if you're trying to play your part on the piano, say da 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 da, maybe this is your weird melody that you're singing. This note, this note, this note, this note, and this note. Hopefully I didn't miss any. These are all actually sharped. Because this means every F, every G, every C, every D, all of them anytime you come across it. Unless you see this sign, which means don't sharp. That's a natural. Unless you see that, you have to sharp it, but it's not written right there. So as you're playing through your music, it can be hard to remember that. So until you get used to key signatures, the best thing you can do is go through, find all the Fs, all the Gs, all the Ds, and all the C's. I didn't write a C. Here's a C. And actually draw a sharp in front of them, and that'll make it easier to play on the piano. Which can be tedious, but if you're dedicated and you want to really practice and learn this stuff, then that's a good way to start. But next time we'll talk about where these come from, why we use them, why they're useful, and how they come out of scales. So that does it for today. Until next time.